Oh, good morning again. Continuing on our discussion of the material for CMPT 214, I'm going to be giving some brief comments right now on preventing shell interpretation with an eye towards helping you with some of your lab work and subsequent course material. I had noted that the Unix shell automatically gives significance to certain characters within it. So, as we'll talk more about later today, for example, an asterisk is interpreted as a wildcard in file names. So, we can do an ls, foo star, and list all files that start with the word foo. If we do echo $a, $sign be interpreted as indicating that we're trying to echo out the contents of the $sign says substitute the contents of this variable, a shell variable a. Now that's often helpful, but sometimes we don't want to do that. We actually want it to take at face value sort of what we're specifying, and not lend extra interpretation to these sort of characters like star, or asterisk, characters like a percent sign, characters here like this vertical bar. And so what I'm trying to deal here is with the issue of preventing the shell from interpreting these characters. Now I alluded to that very briefly once or twice in lecture, concerning quotes or concerning backslashes, but I really want to bring it home here more clearly. So consider a case, for example, where we'd actually like to use the cut command to extract the third field within a file called data, where the delimiter used to delineate different fields within this file data is actually a vertical bar. Now, if I try to issue this command in this sort of naively, as shown here, I'm going to run into problems. I'm going to get error messages such as this. Why? So why would I get error messages like that? Think about it for a moment. Well, what's going on here is it's interpreting this vertical bar as indicating what? As ensuring there's a pipe. So in other words, that the output from this should be placed into data. And as you can see, it gets all confused and gives a couple of error messages related to this. One is it says, hey, I don't know how to run data. I don't have permission to run it. So it's going to give me this permission denied based on its permissions. Presumably this doesn't have the execute bit set for your level of access. But secondly, it's saying, hey, there was no information provided for the option -d. If you're going to say -d, you have to give some delimiter, something like a colon character, whatever. And in this case, it says, hey, nothing was given, and that's because it's interpreting this vertical bar as indicating that there's a pipe going on. So it thinks, so there's nothing being specified as the delimiter for -d. So how do you stop this? How do you prevent it from sort of falling into this trap of imposing its normal interpretation here? That's what we're going to be addressing here. Our second issue would be if we actually have a file name where we want to have a special character, say a character such as this ampersand. You notice if we try to issue that, it gets confused. Why? Well, among other things, it takes this ampersand character to mean something. What does it take it to mean? Well, what it takes it to mean is that it wants us to start up ls-l space t as a background process. Remember, ampersand following a command means, hey, start as a background process in case it's running for a long time. And then, secondly, it's interpreted this t order PDF as invoking some file called t as an executable that is trying to run it. And then finally, this ls says, hey, I can't find this t that you've given it. So altogether, it's gotten quite confused because it's breaking up this t and t into pieces because it considers this ampersand a special character, a keyword, as it were. Special character with special meaning. So how do we prevent that? That's what we're going to be talking about here. Well, a very reliable way is to use an escape character before the command character, the special character you'd like to use. So for example, if we had done backslash this vertical bar, it would say, okay, take that vertical bar at face value. Just use it as a vertical bar. Don't interpret it specially. It's not going to leave the backslash in there. The backslash just tells it, hey, take this at face value, this vertical bar. Similarly here, backslash says, take this ampersand at face value. Another potential thing we could do is put a quote around this. So you could put a quote around the vertical bar, for example. Put a quote around this T and T thing. Now, that works for many cases. The problem is that even inside quotes, you get expansions of shell variables like this. So if we had $home, it would still interpret that. Okay. If you want to prevent all interpretations of a string, don't put it in these double quotes. Put it instead in single quotes. Now, it's very important that these not be back single quote. They be forward single quote. There shouldn't be this one that sort of slanted in that in that way from sort of left upper left to lower right. It should be forward single quotes, slanted if at all in a different direction. So there we can do echo home, and it'll echo home. Okay. If we had done echo double quote home and $home and double quotes on both sides, it would echo the value of whatever that variable is, the variable home. Okay. So for the sake of this discussion, for the sake of preventing interpretation, do not use back single quotes like this. We'll be getting on to how they're used, and it relates to something we had mentioned in passing earlier that we'll deal with later in the course, but particularly with scripting. But don't use them to prevent interpretation. Okay. Okay. So those are my sort of brief comments on preventing shell interpretation of things. Hopefully those will help you with some of your labs and otherwise in the course and in your use of Unix more broadly.